Okay, so we have some books to talk about because it is August 28th when I'm filming this. I'm not sure what date it'll be when I go up, but I don't think I'm going to be getting any books finished before the month ends. So I'm just going to do my August wrap-up / reviews now. Alrighty then, so I managed to read 8 books this month and none of them were on my TBR list. So I've decided I'm probably not going to do one for a while because I'm going back to school and I won't have time to read as much. Especially where I have to start reading my books for my English courses. That's besides the point. So, okay. What did I read this month? Well, I managed to complete a full series including its new novellas. I finished a duology that I've been wanting to read since forever, and I started a trilogy but didn't finish it. Instead, I just read the first 2 books. Alright, so what are these books? Well, let me tell you. The first book is Under the Never Sky. This book is by Veronica Rossi, and I've been wanting to read it for a very long time, under the recommendation of Ginger Reads Lainey, who compares it to crack cocaine. My roommate, who read it while going on a trip, also compared it to crack cocaine. So what did I do? I went and read it, and yes, it is exactly crack cocaine. I've never actually tried crack cocaine. Don't do it, it's bad. But it's so completely addicting, and although while I was reading it, it was a little boring at times, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it for most of the time, when I was finished reading it, I was absolutely addicted and I had to get on to the next book because when I thought back to it, that book was absolutely fantastic. I gave it 5 stars across the board, and I would give it 5 stars over and over and over again if you let me. The next book that I read, what would you know? Through the Evernight, the second book in the Under the Never Sky trilogy by Veronica Rossi. This book was also absolutely fantastic. It had its dull moments because it's a middle book, and middle books are kinda like fillers. But it didn't have as much filling to it, and I absolutely loved all the action-packed adventures that Arya and Perry go on in this book. I gave this book also 5 out of 5 stars, and I would continue to give it 5 stars if you let me. The third book that I read this month, what would you guess? Into the Still Blue. An amazing book and absolutely my favorite of the trilogy. It was absolutely perfect and a great conclusion to this trilogy. I did not feel longing to know what happens afterwards, although I wouldn't mind knowing what happens afterwards. But it was absolutely perfect. I loved all the action, I loved how everything was resolved, and I loved how we didn't have to sit through Perry's 3 days on a boat. Sorry if that was a spoiler. I didn't tell you what part it was from, so oops. Alright, what did I read next? Well, I read 2 novellas, and what are those novellas? Roar and Live and Brooke, both by Veronica Rossi, part of the Under the Never Sky trilogy. Let's start with Roar and Live. Roar and Live was technically supposed to be read before you read Under the Never Sky, but I read it after I read the entire trilogy, which kind of made me excited because I love Liv, and spoiler alert, and I hated that she died. I absolutely wanted her in there, and I want more Liv. I want a complete series based on Liv because she was absolutely perfect. I loved her. I wanted more seeing her with her and Arya. I wanted to see more of her Roar and Liv, so I was excited for this novella, and after reading it, it made me want to go read fanfiction even though I didn't do it. Brooke, I only gave 4 stars out of 5, which is the only book that I gave 4 stars out of 5 in this series, and that was because it was supposed to be read in between Through the Evernight and Into the Still Blue, and I think if I had read it then I would have liked it more, but it just seems like a little bit of nonsense. The only times that I actually enjoyed reading this book was when we got to see some insight to what happens between the 2 books with Perry and Arya. I didn't like anything that had to do with Brooke. I didn't like Brooke. I didn't like that she, spoiler alert, kissed all the brothers. I kind of thought that was a little trashy. Maybe that's just me, but regardless, 4 to 5 still. So that's an absolutely phenomenal review for an entire series, managing to get 4 books with 5 out of 5 and 1 with only 4 out of 5. So if you haven't read this series, you should probably go out and do it now so you can understand why I'm so excited about this book. The next book that I read was of Poseidon. I got this book from the book outlet, as you've probably seen in a previous video. I absolutely love this book. It was also very action-packed and interesting, and I've never read a mermaid book, Serena book before, and I really enjoyed it, surprisingly. I liked the whole I liked the whole Poseidon and Triton and the gifts and all that kind of stuff, so I really enjoyed that book. Right after finishing Of Poseidon, I went into Of Triton, of course, and I absolutely loved it. I gave both of these books 5 stars. I wanted to continue on with the trilogy since Of Neptune recently came out, but I couldn't get into it, probably because the Of Poseidon and Of Triton are so well formed, and it almost seemed like the book was finished, so I just haven't felt the need to finish it. I'll probably will finish it eventually because I do really love the story, but it just seems like it's an extra book and it wasn't actually needed right now, so I'm not entranced, I guess, to finish the trilogy right now. The next book that I read was Where She Went. This was after watching the If I Stay movie, which I absolutely loved. I read the book a few months back. They changed some things, like the band's name is supposed to be Shooting Star and not Willamette Stone, and that he doesn't actually bring the Juilliard letter to her, and that she gets it after she comes out of the hospital. But for the most part, they did a really good job. I understand why these changes were made, and I absolutely loved the movie. It made me cry, and it made me want to finish the duology, which I've been wanting to read for a while, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. And I absolutely loved the second book. I was reading it at work one day, and there was just one page where all I wanted to do was cry, and I couldn't because I was at work. So if you haven't read the second book in the duology, please do yourself a favor and read it. It kind of starts off shitty because they're not together anymore, spoiler alert, but it's okay. Just read it. You'll find out why. And the last book that I read this month, actually that was the last book that I read this month, because I haven't been able to finish a book since. I've started Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood for school. I'm kind of getting ahead even though I haven't touched it in a couple days. And I've also started The Giver, which I'm partway through, and I probably will finish it eventually, maybe even tonight, but I honestly don't know if I am going to finish it. I just haven't been in a reading mood lately, I guess. I guess I'm in some kind of like book hangover from all the amazing books that I've been reading over the summer, and now that I have to go back to school, I know that I'm not going to be able to read as much, and the books might not be as interesting as I want them to be, but that's all I can do. I will try and keep you posted on what I'm reading. You can definitely check it out on Goodreads. I always post up there. I am actually only 47 books into my 50 book challenge for this year, so I only have 3 books left. So keep an eye out for that. I may be changing it. Once I hit my 50 books, I probably will go back and do a 50 book video to discuss, just name out all the books that I read this year, because I read some pretty fantastic books. But that's beside the point. Now that is it. I will see you next time, and just a reminder, there will not be a September TBR video this month because where I am going back to school, I don't want to limit myself to the books I have to read if I get a chance to read them, because I do have a ton of novels to read for school. But if I do end up reading, you will hear from me, and I will see you next time. Bye!